Hello, I kind of just want to rant about some thoughts I'm having. So I was kind of thinking about how, like, Gnosis, like, if you don't know what that is, it's like the inner knowing, like, innate knowing. It's kind of like the opposite of learning, because learning, in a sense, is to begin in ignorance, right? You can't learn it if you already know it, and to work your way to um, knowing, basically, to knowing. And Gnosis is the sense of already knowing. And so I guess it makes sense and it seems pretty like no duh, but I guess I never really thought about it that way as them being like opposites. And so I wonder too if with Gnosis, since learning is the process of ignorance to understanding, would not, if Gnosis is the opposite, be in a way the process of knowing to like a state of like, in a way, chosen ignorance? Because when you inner know things, like, it's not, if you were, I guess, at the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm thinking here in absolutes, right? And obviously this is like a spectrum of any opposites I'm going to talk about are a spectrum. But so, like, on the opposite end, ultimate, like, Gnosis would be like knowing everything innately. This would be like a god kind of entity, but in a way, if it were like the collective consciousness being all knowing, like a god entity, would it not, for its own sanity with all the infinity out there, have to choose like a certain level of ignorance that, like, it has to have these barriers? Because there's, when you know everything and you know every possible outcome, I imagine you'd be faced with like a form of like choice paralysis, but like times 10, because when the choice is infinite, literally, what do you choose? It's too hard to make a choice. You would have to, in a way, have this sort of inaction that would come about with you. I mean, and that would, obviously, this is from a human perspective, so I have no idea what it would be like from a deity's perspective if one were to exist or anything like that. But I don't know. It was just an interesting thought that I was having, and it too just, I'd never really thought about learning, the process of learning being like something that has to come from ignorance. Like, and so I think a lot of people give ignorance a really negative connotation, and it can. I think what people think of as ignorance is actually willful ignorance, and that's why it has the negative connotation. So let me explain that to you. Ignorance, as a word, just means not knowing. Babies are ignorant. We don't think that's bad, right? We wouldn't expect a baby to know everything. It's expected, in certain aspects of life, certain levels of ignorance. And of course, as we get older, our ignorance levels are supposed to diminish, but truly there is so much to learn. There is a certain level of ignorance we all retain, like, most of us are going to be ignorant about rocket science unless you're a rocket scientist. I'm ignorant in, doctor science, medical, I don't, it's not something that I know well, I didn't go study it, and so there's a level of ignorance I will always have, and we all will. And so I think giving it a negative connotation, making it shameful, really only stunts our ability to learn, because when we can embrace our ignorance, that can foster a sense of desire to learn and grow, and an enjoyment from learning, because we know that we're growing, and because we are aware of our level of ignorance, right? And so I feel like a lot of that for me has translated, I learned it from parenting my child and making sense of the natural, like, loving emotions I felt for him that had never really been shown for me. And so it's crazy, really, to be able to put it into words that, like, we shouldn't shame. I think it starts a lot in childhood. I think a lot of children are made to feel like less than because they don't know certain things, instead of like encouraged to embrace their ignorance by their parents, which I think would and has done a world of good for at least my own child. I just don't think ignorance is something that we need to be taught to be ashamed of. Ignorance is a natural state of being for, I think, every living creature, really. We all have to learn to survive and take care of ourselves. And so there is a difference, though, between ignorance, which nothing to be ashamed of, right? That's just, we can't help it. And I think all those things that we can't help that are beyond our control are not things we need to feel shame for. And so what is in our control, though, is willful ignorance. And many people, and I'm sure we all in some way have a bit of willful ignorance somewhere, and this is probably a spectrum as well, varying degrees, a tiny bit of, maybe that's denial, willful ignorance, or, extreme willful ignorance to the point of bigotry and things like that, of that nature, There's a huge spectrum, I believe, in between. And so that is when we are presented with information that it seems to be factual, right? Yet it goes against our map of reality, so we deny it. We don't put it into our map of reality. We ignore it. We pretend it doesn't exist. We come up with some excuse as to why we don't need to listen to it. Whatever the reasoning, the fact remains that we're just not listening to seemingly solid advice or sound fact presented to us. That's willful ignorance. Like, being told that there is a crap ton of sugar in soda and that, carbon or the carbonation's bad for your teeth, and then still drinking soda and not brushing your teeth, and knowing all this, being taught, being told, being shown in your own decaying mouth, and still refusing to do anything about it because you choose to just pretend like it doesn't exist, right? And you can admit that it exists, that, oh yeah, I know these things, but then you still do nothing about it. That is like a certain level of willful ignorance, but in this case, you're really only hurting yourself. But like I said, unfortunately, there are cases where willful ignorance hurts other people as well. A lot of cases where willful ignorance will hurt other people. So like refusing to look at the statistical data behind the fact that like more incarcerations in the United States happen to African American citizens. That's just like kind of fact. Like more African American people are getting arrested per like population percentage. It's not okay. That implies a level of inherent systemic racism in the policing in our country. We need to look at that. We can't just pretend it doesn't exist. That's like societal willful ignorance on some people's part. Not everyone, thank God. We wouldn't even be having discussions like this if it was everyone, But yeah, ignorance is no innate evil, but choosing ignorance when presented the option to learn and grow, it's not good. I don't want to say it's bad or wrong or evil, because sometimes we have to make wrong choices to understand that they're wrong. Sometimes I think we all do sometimes have to learn things the hard way. If you're smart, you only learn things the hard way once, and then you find the easy way to learn them, right? But I'm stupid, so I've learned a lot of things the hard way. And so, but yeah, being presented the option to learn and grow and denying that, I think, is a personal failing. You're denying yourself a beautiful opportunity to become a more well-rounded individual, because none of us know everything and none of us will know everything. So therefore, there's always more to learn. And I find that the richest thought actually can come from indulging opposite thoughts of yours, and not necessarily that you agree with them, but maybe it can strengthen even your own understanding of your opinion, to see the other side and be like, well, this is why I disagree with it, or sometimes it does change your mind. I feel like on less controversial issues, sometimes minds can be swayed a lot easier, ones not involving like, human rights and bigotry. Like, we're tax dollars are spent, like what percentage goes to roads. Like I'm willing to be swayed on percentages. You know? I'm not steadfast in those opinions or anything. But yeah, we can't deny reality and think that we're making informed choices. And I think to always assure that we are making the most informed decision we can, we have to make sure we're getting as much input and perspectives, facets of the issue that we are forming an opinion about, you know? But yeah, ignorance is not, it's not terrible. It's just when we choose that over everything else, to fit our own biases because we're uncomfortable with growing. We're just really doing ourselves a disservice. Oh my god, this is my wake-up call to fix my posture. Hello. Yeah. Are you happy there? This is Juniper. Yeah.